Hello there, welcome to part 19 of my Clone Wars analysis series. In today's video, we'll be examining Storm over Ryloth, Season 1, Episode 19. The goal of this series is to unpack the Clone Wars animated show and look closely at its themes, characters, and politics. As always, there will be spoilers as we're covering the entire episode and series. That said, let's jump into it. Storm over Ryloth is the first episode of a three-part narrative arc surrounding the Battle of Ryloth. As the name implies, it is a space battle between the Republic and the Separatists over the planet, and the conflict is important as it will determine if the Republic can get through the blockade and help the twi'leks below. The quote for the episode is, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." This quote correlates to Ahsoka as the episode is pivotal in her overall character development, and is basically the finale for her character in Season 1, as outside of a cameo at the end of the Ryloth arc, this is her last major appearance. As audiences know, Ahsoka is a beloved and great character over the seasons of Clone Wars, and appears on other shows as well. While Ahsoka has had failures in prior episodes, such as that in Duel of the Droids, they all fade in comparison to her monumental failure in the space battle above Ryloth. However, it is an important failure that helps her grow and teaches her the importance of being a leader. The opening narration explains that Ryloth has been invaded, occupied, and blockaded by the Separatists. Ryloth is home to the twi'leks, made famous by Ula, Jabba's dancer, and Return of the Jedi. As this episode is the first of a three-part arc, the narration lays the groundwork for what to expect. Part 1 is the space battle above the planet with Anakin and Ahsoka, Part 2 is the ground assault by Obi-Wan, and Part 3 is the liberation of Ryloth with Mace Windu. If one flash forwards to Season 3, there is an episode named Supply Lines which serves as a prequel to Ambush. While Supply Lines revisits King Katunka before Ambush, it also revisits the Ryloth occupation and prequels this arc as well. In that episode, Cham Syndulla, the leader of the Twi'lek freedom fighters, fights the droid army and receives the Republic supplies to keep fighting. In the conclusion of this Season 1 arc, Mace Windu meets with Cham Syndulla to help finish the liberation of this planet. The whole point I've raised by including supply lines into the picture is that the Separatist occupation of Ryloth is longer than what the Ryloth arc initially portrays. While Cham Syndulla isn't in this episode, I intend to talk about him a bit throughout the analysis of the arc, as he is the father of Hera Syndulla, one of the main characters on Rebels, who was young during the Clone War and survived this very occupation. Another point to make about the arc itself, before we even dive into the episode, is that in terms of its presentation, it's the first major planetary battle on the Clone Wars. Episodes like Ambush or Defenders of Peace have a few clones and Jedis that work together against the entire army, and while they serve as good plot points, it is likely a byproduct of how many models the animators could use at one time. Ryloth is full-on war, with the conclusion having walkers and tanks in a large landscape, and this initial episode having a large-scale space battle. As it is the last major arc in Season 1, it does a really good job at showing the war's effects on a group of people, and paves the way for future large-scale battles such as Geonosis and Umbara. At the start of the episode, we are introduced to the Neimoidian captain, Martuk, who serves as the antagonist for the episode. However, he is introduced as being subservient to Wat Tambor, the Separatist leader behind Ryloth's occupation, and one of the big Separatist names as he is on the Separatist Council. Something I find very interesting when it comes to villains is the power ladder that they serve, and how it is complementary to an episodic arc like this that builds towards a climax. Before the battle, Ahsoka is getting into her Jedi starfighter and talks with her new astromech droid. She says, "This is my first time commanding a squadron, R7, let's make a good impression." She's audibly anxious about the responsibility of leadership, and R7 calls her out on being nervous. While R7 doesn't have nearly as many appearances as R2 throughout the show, the droid is a good friend of Ahsoka and appears in the finale of the series overall as one of her allies during Order 66. Anakin approaches her starfighter, calls her Snips, which is his teasing term of endearment for her in Season 1, and addresses the nervous issue. Anakin tells her, "I have faith in you, I wouldn't send you out there if I didn't think you could handle it." This episode does serve as a finale in a way to Anakin and Ahsoka's teacher-student relationship for Season 1. I'd say that she developed a lot as a character in the Jedi Crash and Blue Shadow Virus arcs, and Anakin can recognize that and is pushing the envelope of what she can do as a leader. At this point in time, she does seem way more prepared to lead than she did in the Malevolence or Downfall of a Droid arc. And even if she isn't fully ready now, the only way to learn is to leave one's comfort zone. Ahsoka's squadron's goal is to clear a path through the droid fighters so the cruisers can move to engage the enemy. Ahsoka feels the momentum of battle and wants to take the fight to the enemy cruisers as they are vulnerable now that they've destroyed their fighter support. Captain Took has a secret plan and more cruisers waiting to enter the system, so at his command, 4 more ships join his ranks and make Ahsoka's attack blatantly a bad idea. Despite Admiral Yularen telling her it's a trap, she says, "You're overreacting, I can get us through." Yularen then orders her to return, and Anakin, who usually disobeys orders, confirms that the situation is too risky and Ahsoka should retreat. Yularen questions Anakin if he trained her to be this way, which in many ways is unintentionally true. In the Malevolence arc, Anakin left his post and disobeyed orders to look for survivors, and in Duel of the Droids he abandons the Republic mission to go look for R2. His methods definitely influence how Ahsoka makes decisions, as he is her teacher and role model. While Anakin agreed with Yularen before, he didn't order Ahsoka back. However, after the battle becomes worse on the Republic, he does then order his student back, to which Ahsoka agrees. Whether she listens to him more than others, or perhaps the loss of some of her pilots affected her decision, or both, she returns to the Venator. She tells one of her pilots, "We aren't retreating, we are following orders," which shows that she has some pride and ego and doesn't want to give up. This was her first real situation as a leader, and she wanted to do good when it came to giving orders, and not having to take the orders from others. Because of Ahsoka's reluctance to return, the Republic Venator sustained massive damage. Admiral Yularen is wounded, and Axe, one of Ahsoka's best pilots, dies. Anakin tells Ahsoka how disappointed he is in her because she disobeyed Yularen and his own order. She meant well, expressing that she wanted to succeed so Ryloth could be liberated, but Anakin explains to her that in war one should always listen to their superiors, which is ironic as is often demonstrated that Anakin doesn't listen to his superiors. Ahsoka even raises this point, which highlights some of the examples I listed earlier of Anakin doing his own thing in front of her. This helps Anakin sympathize with her as he knows what she is going through. Ahsoka expresses sadness over losing almost all of her pilots. Men died because of her decisions. And Anakin says, "Take heart, little one, that is the reality of command." This concept of loss and leadership is applicable throughout the whole show. One of the most recent and striking examples is when Ahsoka finds Vaughn wounded and dying in the siege of Mandalore. Captain Took showed perceptiveness and recognized that General Skywalker was leading the attack based on the lead Venator. After the battle, he orders his droid to pull up Anakin's file so he can study his opponent. This method of knowing one's opponent to predict their moves reminds me very much of Grand Admiral Thrawn. The Neimoidian knows that Skywalker is unconventional for a Jedi and prepares for his return. However, his ego is his downfall. He shares with Wat Tambor that Skywalker is an incredible general and warrior, and that he wants to be the one to take down such a noble figure. The flaw of ego is similarly explored in the Malevolence arc with Grievous. During a strategic talk about the invasion and liberation of Ryloth, Mace addresses that if Anakin's fleet isn't able to break through the blockade, then the mission of helping Ryloth will have to be postponed. This dramatizes Ahsoka's failure further and shows that every decision made by leaders have consequences. The impacts of Ahsoka's failure don't just negatively affect the strategy, but also the characters. Yularen is wounded and Ahsoka apologizes to him directly, which shows the depth of her guilt. We get a brief scene of Anakin tinkering with Ahsoka's starfighter, which underlines his mechanical skills at fixing things. During this sequence, he tells her that they have to make do with what they have because the twi'leks and Ryloth are depending on them. Because of her failure and the loss of the many pilots, Ahsoka is emotional about the mission and doesn't believe they can do it. Anakin devises a new plan based on Ahsoka's frustration with the fact that they can't smash through the blockade with what they have. He has his cruiser evacuated so he can pilot it directly into the control ship and kill the commander. He is also aware of how the combat losses affected Ahsoka emotionally and made her feel grief, so his plan puts no other lives at risk but his own. While his plan is okay, it requires Ahsoka to lead the rest of the troops to take out the other cruisers. Still low in confidence after her failure, she expresses that she can't be responsible if something goes wrong, but Anakin tells her that she is responsible. This episode is monumental in the sheer growth it gives to Ahsoka compared to the other episodes in Season 1. She has to accept her own failures and has to accept her own responsibilities, which helps her become a better leader and character. The Neimoidian's ego gets the better of him, as when Anakin attempts his plan, he contacts the captain and tells him that he will surrender himself and his crew in exchange for supplies to be given to the Twi'lek people. This statement briefly addresses the same issues as in supply lines that in occupied people need food and other things for survival. Captain Took says, "Your capture would make me the envy of the Separatist fleet," which cements his demise. Anakin allows his ship to continue flying towards the command vessel and escapes in an escape pod. Ahsoka makes a new plan by suggesting turning the Venator on its side to keep the bridge safe from the enemy cruisers. However, both the naval officer and Rex question her plan, and someone with weaker character would begin to question themselves and their plan too when faced with such opposition. However, Ahsoka steps up as a leader and affirms that they don't have time to do anything else. Yularen steps onto the bridge despite his injuries and agrees with Ahsoka's bold plan. It is a resolution to their prior argument over orders and his injury due to her decisions. After Anakin takes out the command ship, Ahsoka's squadron uses Y-wings to bomb the enemy cruisers who are confused without real leadership. There's a small foil here between the two sides, as the droids are unable to win a battle without the real leader to control them, and that position was filled by the Neimoidian. While the clones are better than droids without a leader, their true success is brought out with a confident leader, such as when Ahsoka finds her confidence and responsibility and helps them win. Likewise, at the beginning of the episode, Anakin expressed disappointment in Ahsoka's bad leadership, but once she learned from it and grew and succeeded, he seemed to take pride in her victory. When it comes to Ryloth, I will touch on Rebels a bit throughout the arc, as Chom is Hera's father and Ryloth is on the show. I find it to be important. Chopper is Hera's droid and is the main character on Rebels. Chopper's model of astromech droid was used by the Republic during the Clone Wars, and this was brought into the Clone Wars Season 7 as one of many tie-in connections and references to Rebels. In Hera's Heroes, an episode of Rebels where they go to Ryloth, Hera explains that she pulled Chopper out of a Y-Wing that crashed during the Clone Wars. I'm almost positive that this Y-Wing was from Anakin's fleet, as while Obi-Wan and Mace Windu arrive with more reinforcements, they are ground forces, and even later in this arc, Anakin and Ahsoka are shown as still being in charge of the air battle. Ahsoka led a squadron of Y-Wings in the final battle of this episode, so it's likely that Chopper was in one of them and crashed down below on Ryloth for Hera to find as a child. This knowledge doesn't change the episode at all, but is a cool tidbit of information for those who may put things together.